The Angry Chicken is a production of Amove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Hey everyone! Get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is the Angry Chicken.
Greetings and welcome back, everyone, to the Angry Chicken. I'm Garrett Weinzerl here, as always, with Willie Dills Gregory and Jocelyn Carney. Welcome back, you two. It's a thick show today.
Yeah, lots to talk about.
Big news.
Thick,
Big friggin' news out of nowhere.
Thick and heavy, yeah. Like
Well, I guess it wasn't out of nowhere. Danae did say that the classic thing was happening soon, but I didn't know we were going to get this much, I guess.
It was hinted at, yeah. Turns out Mike Danae's daughter's stream is a deep well of teasers and hints as to what's coming for the future of Hearthstone. Only, I don't know, I expected a little more time, but yeah. We got a bunch of new cards revealed, a lot of stuff to talk about. I guess before we get into it, because it's just so thick, let's thank our patrons supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. Some of our latest patrons are Ryan D and Joshua C. Thank you for the support, you two. Also, it doesn't feel like big news anymore, so I'm just going to mention it now and get it out of the way. There was a wild card bundle added to the store. It's up right now. Apparently, it's going to be up for a limited time, but there's 56 packs in total. You're going to get 8 packs from every expansion in Wild for $35 US. That's cool. And I
already bought it.
I saw that and I'm like, oh, that could be a thick topic right there. We could wax philosophical about actually, giving some love to the Wild crew, especially maybe players that are new to Wild. But there's no time for that today. There's too many things.
And I guess all I can really say is it's cool. It's also not enough cards where if you have no Wild cards, you could suddenly play Wild, but it's a step in the right direction, right? It's definitely the first time they've given real love to adding to the Wild collection. This is, I hope that they just kind of like go this route in a permanent way in the future, because I think at some point we want to look at maybe Wild packs should just be slightly discounted so that maybe people will go, oh, well, I just want to play Wild. I'll buy 300 Wild packs and they might make some money. I don't know. Just saying, you might make some money. That you're not making currently.
Yeah, and if you're not new, if you're like us, you've been playing since the beginning, $35 for 56 packs of a lot of dust is still a really good deal.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it. Is I was just like, okay, 56 packs for a heavily discounted price that I will probably mostly be turning to dust. So yeah, this is a great deal to help me with my current collection.
Also, you did notice they did the 8 packs of each expansion instead of 10, right? So you will probably hit your timer if you never open packs from those expansions, but not all the time.
Yeah. There's still a small chance that you won't hit that legendary, but still good deal. Would love to see more of this, and that's good news. But there's even more.
Good news, everyone!
So new classic cards have been revealed. Team 5 announced new cards are coming to Hearthstone, and they also outlined their current class identity philosophy. And there's just so much to unpack here, but first they kind of went in and identified strengths and weaknesses of each class as they currently would like them to be in their talk about class identity. And I'll be honest, I didn't even scroll through and kind of spoil myself in this. I was reading it in order. I'm like, oh, this is a really fascinating look at what they think the class identity for all classes in Hearthstone is. And then I got to the bottom, I'm like, oh, and they're removing 2 cards that I didn't see coming at all, and then adding 2 new cards to replace them for Rogue and for Priest, because according to their current stance on class identity for Rogue and for Priest, Vanish for Rogue and Mind Blast for Priest goes against where they think the classes should be.
Yeah, and I think these are the 2 cards that make sense from the classic basic set that go against these class identities. The problem that I have with a lot of this stuff is as I read through these, I go, yeah, that's not true at all for that class.
Well, I read it more as a, like, I don't know. To me personally, I feel like since we know how far ahead Hearthstone actually works, we're starting to now get to the point where they haven't had anything like in the works from before, like the old guard. So like Broad and Yongwu and everybody else, like they left about a year ago this time, right? So if we assume their influence was on everything we've gotten up to this point, then it makes sense to me that now the team is maybe reassessing a lot of their design choices and trying to push things into a new direction. So I think that there are going to be some things, especially in expansions, that may not fit these class identities, but it seems to me like this is here's what we're thinking and are going to work towards going forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think that when you look at the class identities that they've laid down, a lot of it seems to be what the classic basic sets defined for those classes, but not at all what those classes have looked like since then.
Yeah, and I think that's okay.
Shaman says card generation is a weakness. Card generation is an absolute strength of Shaman right now. They have
but I think right now
a dozen cards that generate other cards, right?
Because like all of those cards that generate new cards are expansion things that are current in standard that are going to rotate out. So I think it's okay for them to kind of like play around with class identity, especially if some classes and their identity hasn't really been like seen a lot or valid in a meta for a while, and they want to say like, okay, maybe their weaknesses are too weak. How about, or making the class too weak, how about we give them some cards to shore up those weaknesses? If they get too powerful, it's okay because that rotates, but like classically this is what the class is gonna look like.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like, I think this must have been a recent meeting they had where they said, guys, I think we've gotten away from what we wanted these classes to be. Let's like refocus on that. And absolutely. The thing is though, is like, I think they needed to communicate that in this message because, oh my God, did Reddit go off on some of this stuff? And I was like, I could, logically you could see exactly what that is, but you could also see that, like, I think they needed to say, we've gotten away from it and we want to get back to it. And we want to make sure that we're starting to move back in that direction.
Which is really funny because that's totally the tone I got from reading this article. Is I was like, oh, okay, so this is their jumping off point. This is their like big picture, what the classes look like, blah, 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 blah. And then I read the comments, I read Reddit, and I was just like,
yeah, nobody else got that.
Yeah, nobody else got that but me.
Because those words aren't in there. I mean, you can interpret it that way, but the words aren't there. And I think a lot of people they need the words. They're not gonna, they're not doing a show about the game for like years and analyzing how the devs work and all that stuff. They're just knee-jerk reaction every single time. And when they read these, that this is the strength of Rogue, or this is the strength. Like when you read the strength or a weakness of Mage being, what was it specifically? Minion swarms. That's a limitation. And you're currently playing against mages who for 8 mana make 4 12 drops with Khadgar. It's just like, that doesn't seem like a limitation, so that's and I understand that people looked at that and went, hold on a second. You're telling me that you made Vex Crow for a class that's limitation is making minion swarms? So it's good that they're like looking at this and going, wait a minute, have we gotten out of control? Have we lost sight of what these class identifications are supposed to be? And they're trying to get back to that. Now the timing is awkward because you're nerfing Priest essentially by getting rid of Mind Blast at a time when Priest is not doing so well. But I get it. Like, I'm like, yeah, no, this is the time to do it because they're adding a bunch of these classic cards in. This is the time to Hall of Fame some stuff. It's fine.
Which is awesome that they're Hall of Faming stuff, right?
Yeah, not at the
rotation.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I've got to say, as much as I didn't expect like Mind Blast and Vanish to be the two cards, especially of Rogue, of all of the classic basic Rogue cards, Vanish is probably the one that was just not on my radar. But at the same time, I can see how Vanish as a card makes it's such a big design piece, right, that they have to worry about all the time. And it's enabled some of the like decks that they have just not had any idea of how to balance, like Quest Rogue. How many times they try to balance Quest Rogue? And it's like, all they need to do is like banish and replay and banish and replay. It's like, man. Like,
they just nerfed Pogo Rogue with this change.
That too, yeah. But it's like they have to constantly design around this specific rogue spell. So I can see that. I would say even prep goes in that same bucket of limiting their design space. But I mean, like, people have also said, but they can still clear board with, the new Plague Bringer alongside Wild Pyro and a spell. It's like, yeah, but then you've got 3 cards you got to get all together, and you're not putting that stuff back in the hand, which the back in the hand was the problem to balance. So I feel like these kind of, when you stop to think about it, these changes make sense. These rotations to Hall of Fame make sense for standard. Dude, do I feel bad for Wild.
I actually kind of find Vanish to feel like a rogue card, though, to me. Like it feels like something Rogue would do. It's like, I'm leaving the battle. And like, I guess you could say, like, because they did have the ice blocky type secret, which I think, has that rotated? Have all the rogue secrets rotated? They have, right?
No.
No.
Oh, they're still here? They just don't see any play? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they just don't see any play.
So, I mean, that is kind of what it is, but I always thought, like, Rogue just vanishing. It was a very WoW Rogue thing to do, right? Like, it's like, I'm not killing anything. I'm just exiting the battle and I'm stopping things for a while, and then we'll all come back later. I kind of wanted maybe see them just nerf it if they found it to be a problem, but I don't know. It's fine. It's not really bothering me. It's not like I was putting Vanish in all my Rogue decks. It's
they
just
are
like
gone. I guess they were all Kobolds and Catacombs.
Yeah.
Were they?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was like, I swore I would have seen them in a Pogo Rogue, but at least the bounce one. But yeah, it just, that always did seem very roguey to me. Mind Blast with Priest is whatever. I don't know. It's been here forever. I know it's not being played right now, but it'll always make Priest cards like Cloning Gallery and stuff a little bit sketchy, right? Because as long as Malagos and Velen are around,
which they're always going to be around in Wild,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. By the way, these are class or basic cards, right? Not
I think they're classic because they have the gems, right?
No, but I think they put the gem in. Mind Blast was like a card you earn.
Yeah, they added the gem.
You could disenchant them.
Yeah, they added the gem. They added the watermark. These used to not have watermarks either. These are technically basic cards, but they're now getting a gem assigned, and like the classic Hearthstone watermark is being added to them. Or actually, it's a unique one because the classic cards just have the swirl.
It's just the swirl.
This even has the kind of star around the edges. But yeah, I
think that's probably because the swirl ones you can open from packs, right? So
correct.
Yeah.
So now
but like like I was playing Vanish in my Pogo Rogue, so it was seeing some play. Mind Blast was being played in like some random priest decks that were trying to like basically burn you out after maybe getting some face damage in with Divine Spirit Inner Fire. But yeah, I don't know. It's all fine. I'm not too concerned with these cards. Like we'll be okay. Like I think the biggest issue for me still is that they can do this all they want, but the problem is always going to be certain classes have better basic and classic cards than others. Specifically, Priest having some of the worst. I think Shaman also having some of the worst. Rogue having some of the best. Mage having some of the best. That like they're going to be so reliant on expansions, right, to be good. And I think that's really why we need like a kind of a retool overhaul if they're not going to ever introduce the rotations,
which it kind of seems like that's what they're doing, right? By Hall of Fame,
little by little.
Yeah, little bits here and there. And I kind of get that too, because you would hate to see them do like a big, like 50 card classic makeover, but then have that be too OP or whatever. Like, because I said later on in this blog post that a lot of these cards are meant to be middle of the road power wise, because they don't want to introduce something like the next rag into the classic set because it doesn't rotate. So they're playing it safe. And now we've seen them buff cards. So it's perfectly reasonable, I think, to see like they might actually buff some classic cards. They might buff these cards they just released. Like buffs are no longer off the table. So I think we're in a really interesting Hearthstone card design space right now, actually. And I think it's also important to note that this isn't like a balance patch. Vanish and Mind Blast aren't being rotated because they're OP, right? Yeah. They're being rotated.
Design philosophy thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because of design philosophy, class identity, and design space moving forward, these cards didn't have a place in standard Hearthstone. It's not that they're overpowered, guys.
Yeah, they're not. They have been. Well, Mind Blast has been.
Sure.
Mind Blast, like there was, literally one rotation ago. Priest was one of the best. I think though the issue that I bring up that pertaining to is just because they're gonna, if they want to keep Priest good, they're gonna keep having to add AoE in, and then what ends up happening is that Wild Priest just has access to infinite AoE, and they have that kind of right now. They just have so many dang options when it comes to AoE that they are the ultimate when it comes to control, play big stuff, which ultimately is Big Priest, right? So even if like Barnes isn't always necessarily the problem, it's also Psychic Scream and Dragon Potion and
Light Bomb.
Light Bomb, and like just a million things that Priest can do to clear your board. They still have Excavated Evil. They still, all these options, right? So
it'll be interesting to see if that changes in the future. If they actually because there's the two different, and they haven't even, as far as I know, narrowed down how they want to design for Wild, but it's kind of like, do you leave that alone and have the, all the quote unquote mistakes of the past still present in Wild, or do you try to balance that? Do you try to fix it, or do you try to preserve the way things were when those things were live in standard sort of idea? So, they haven't answered that question, so I'm not going to answer that question, but it's an interesting thing to think about Wild, I think, for sure.
I could see that being a shift in focus later on down the road, because this year really feels like their focus has been on keeping standard fresh. And I think they've done a really good job with it this year, after what seemed like a really long wait for the first set this year, even though it was right on time with previous sets. But once we got past Rise of Shadows, it really has seemed like nonstop. Like there's been something new kind of fluffing up what we're seeing and what we expect to see in standard. It's been really nice. So I bet when they kind of get into the groove of that, once they kind of figure out when this kind of adjustment of standard becomes kind of just the way that the team works, I bet we might start to see more tweaks come to Wild more often.
I hope so. I also think the whole class identity thing is overall good, but I don't want it to define these classes forever and ever, because I do think you run the risk of the game feeling stale when the classes feel the same expansion over expansion, right? You do want some fluctuation within that. So at certain points, because obviously it's nice to have, okay, Priest was really good, now Priest isn't so good. This is now, Rogue comes in and has their time to shine. Like, you want that movement of the classes, but also you don't want to feel like right now playing Control Warrior feels like I'm just still playing Control Warrior, right? And it's kind of cool when Warrior steps out of that role and does something different for a while. So I don't want it to just always be, oh, this is what Priest does, this is what Paladin does, and it's always going to be this. I do like that it fluctuates from time to time. It's just you have to be careful of letting it go too far, right? Like if they really do want Shaman to be weak at card generation, they've done a pretty poor job of that, because Shaman literally just generates 1 million cards right now. It's actually kind of crazy. When they said that and I looked at how many cards Shaman can use to generate other cards, I was like, wow, you guys have really lost sight of this one, I guess. So it's like you want it to fluctuate, but you don't want it to go too far in any direction. So it's like I like this, but I'm also slightly concerned that they're going to go down a road of just sameness forever and ever from each class.
There was one really kind of interesting comment in this blog post, or like sentence in this blog post, that talked about how when you queue into a class, you should have a good idea of its strengths and weaknesses, and regardless of the deck that they're playing. And I found that to be a little bit like along the lines of what you were saying, Dills, that maybe potentially, maybe alarming is too strong of a word, but it's like, does that mean that
I disagree with that?
Yeah. And that was actually in the blog post. That's not, me reading into anything. Like that was definitely in the blog post. And I was kind of like, I don't know about that, but it does seem like at least they're reassessing their philosophy, and I'm willing to kind of give it a try, because I don't mind the idea of going into a match and saying like, okay, mage, they're strong at spells and bad at swarming minions, like lots of little things. So that's going to inform my mulligan in some way. And maybe in that world, mage still has 2 or 3 viable decks that play differently. But if I still know that they're going to have like spells and probably not a lot of minions or something like that, like very, very basic, broad example, I'm kind of okay with seeing what that looks like if they can actually put the classes into their proper identities. But like, because I like the idea of having a little bit to go on when it comes to the mulligan. But again, I don't want like there to be a mage playstyle and deck and a hunter playstyle and deck. I want them to be able to experiment and differentiate within a class. But I think you can differentiate while still having the same strengths and weaknesses.
You can. You can still have, you can still say that, warrior is bad at drawing cards, but good at like building armor. It's like, and then still have,
and then have like a minion,
like a mid-range and a control. Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. It's just, please don't go down the road of like, there's 9 classes and then there's 9 decks.
9 decks. Yeah. Which I don't even know if they really could do at this point, because there's so many damn cards in the game. Like someone's gonna make something weird.
Sure. But I mean, it's cool that if you play against the mage, it's like, okay, it might be Cyclone, it might be Freeze. If you play against the hunter, it might be mid range, it might be mechs, it might be slow mech, it might be fast mech. Like that's
but then I know that if I'm going into a hunter, they're not going to heal. So if I just, mulligan for hit them in the face, then that's the kind of Hearthstone world I want to
narrow that down enough and it's okay. Yeah. But when you have it be, they're always not going to be good at this, and this. And you're like, oh, geez.
That's too many thises.
Yeah.
So anyway, Vanished Mind Blast is going to be going to Hall of Fame. In their place, we're getting a new rogue card called Plaguebringer, which is a 4-mana 3/3 rogue minion with a battle cry that reads, give a friendly minion poisonous. Emphasis on battle cry, not combo. This is pretty middle of the road as far as power. I'm not going to be
it's good with lackeys.
Yeah. Yeah,
because you can use a lackey to give another minion rush. Although also they're just 1/1. So I mean, I don't know. This card seems okay. In a world where we don't have some of the old, we have walk the plank and stuff, but we don't have some of the old ways to just straight up kill a single minion. I always kind of like this as an option. It seems very fair, but also potentially really powerful in certain situations.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been given Murloc's poisonous for 1 mana lately, so maybe I'm a little biased
true.
Right now.
And playing a Murloc and generating a Murloc.
Yep. And then I also have a lackey to give the Murloc rush that now has poison. And sometimes. Actually, usually I've been getting the spell lackey and yelling at my computer, but it's all right. Sometimes I need hex. But for priests, since Mind Blast will be going away, they're getting Radiance, a 1-mana spell that restores 5 health to your hero. Cannot be used to heal your board, just you.
And
or
also,
to go face for the opponent either.
That's true, yeah. If you're
it
using
cannot
Shadow.
be turned into, it can be turned into a damaging spell if you really hate your own face. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to lose in style.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I like the design of this card because again, this is something that's never going to rotate. So people, put it up beside like Flash Heal and stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but guys, that's not the point. Like this is never going to leave. So I'm okay with a more conservative design. Like this is baseline priest class now.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I still want to see the classic and basic set just changed up and maybe even consider bringing in cards from older sets that have rotated out. But it doesn't mean that I don't think that this can't also be good for the game. I like that this is what they're doing. If this is the route that they're taking, yeah, it's not my number one request in terms of the way that they decide to address some of the outstanding issues with basic and classic cards. But I still like it. Yeah, I'm not losing my mind over Radiance or Plaguebringer, but.
By the way, these are not in packs, right? These are being added as cards. So like I'm okay with these being really bad because these are like the cards you're supposed to get when you're a brand new player and you level up and you're like, okay, Radiance, can I use that? And you're like, you're new to the game. You're trying to figure out what Priest can do. And you're thinking 1 mana heal my hero for 5. Okay. Seems all right. And then you get in the game and then you realize that's not so good. So then you have like a learning moment. Right. And
yeah. Or it's rank 50 and it did actually help.
Right. So,
yeah. So, but that's not it or all. That's just the 2 cards that will be replacing Vanish and Mind Blast. We're all going to get Plaguebringer and Radiance. But we're getting new classic cards, new cards added into the classic set. And we're going to have to find these in classic packs or craft them. So, rarity also equals price if you think about it in Dust as we're going through these. But let's just go in order that they showed them and start with a new Warlock minion called Siegebreaker. It's a 7-mana 5/8 rare Warlock demon. It has Taunt. Siegebreaker also reads, your other demons have +1 attack.
Okay. I mean, it seems very Warlocky, right? Demon that buffs demons. And I think that this, because it's a card that doesn't rotate, it's a card that could potentially rotate in and out depending on how strong the demon package is in the current sets that we're playing with, right? So it seems like it's fairly it's just a fair card, and sometimes it'll be good. Right now, probably not, but who knows? Maybe we get sweet demon packages in the future, and suddenly it's a good card again.
Well, I mean, this one, to me, as soon as it was announced, I was like, oh man, this just screams like wild to me, because you've got freaking possessed lackey over there pulling things out for free.
Well, Void Caller too.
Void Caller.
Yeah, play it on 4 and then pull this out. So it's just a 5/8 with Taunt, first of all. And then when you bring it back with Gul'dan, you're buffing all your other demons. So yeah. Maybe there's a thing there.
I think there is a thing there over in the wild side. So, I mean, I don't see this seeing play in current standard, but I think there's lots of stuff going on in wild, and demon decks are a lot of fun, like demony zooey type things over in wild, not even just like Gul'dan and Void Daddy shenanigans. Like there's lots of demon cool stuff going on over in wild. So I think this
it cracks the package though, because you got Mal'Ganis and
true.
Yeah, there's just so many good demons. It's just maybe a one of I could see. Where it's like a mini, almost like a little tiny bloodlust for you, you know. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It's an interesting thing to try out for sure.
Yeah. I delete my wild decks pretty frequently, but a demon warlock is one of the ones that's just like locked in and never going away. I love that deck so much. So maybe I'll play around with this a little bit. Druid. Getting Gift of the Wild. It's an 8-mana common druid spell that reads, give your minions +2/+2 and taunt. That seems really expensive.
Yeah.
But
it's like a defensive card for a token deck, which maybe it's like I could only ever see it as a one of, and I could only ever see it in a meta where token druids are worried about dying. And most of the time they're not, because they're the ones doing the killing, right? Like they die when they just get their board cleared a bunch of times. And if they have a board that sticks, giving your board +2/+2 a taunt isn't generally how you stabilize, right? Like you'd rather just Savage Roar and kill your opponent. So yeah, just it seems like the wrong type of card for the wrong type of deck. Just it's not, not going to.
Well, I kind of look at this and go, okay, so I get the choice between +1/+1 or a 3/2 Tiger for 6 less mana.
Right.
Is that +1/+1 and no choice worth 6 mana? No, not at all. I could not believe the mana cost of this card when I saw it. I think it's a really cool card and a really cool design, but 8 mana just seems insane to me.
Yeah, you'd have to hit at least like 3 minions to even be close, because like a 6/6 with taunt might be worth
would still be worth 7.
Still wouldn't be worth 8.
Most.
Yeah, still wouldn't be worth 8. Oh yeah. And if you have 3 minions on the board that you can hit with this, it's like, aren't you winning if you're token druid already?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, it's a very, this one is an odd one. Like the demon made sense to me, but this one, I'm kind of shaking my head on the design of this one a little bit.
Yeah, but again, like they're being careful. They're being cautious.
Yeah, maybe they tested this at lower mana costs and it just made token druid too much of a problem and it was too big of a buff. So
yeah,
druidy card though, right? Like you look at it and you go, okay, yeah, buffing boards, cool, I see it. All right, that's druid.
Yeah, it's definitely in line with what they talked about in class identity, but and frankly, right now, my God, last thing druid needs is affordable board buffs and more of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to look at that and be like, whoa, man, why would I want this? I think this, yeah, again, it's this looks like it could almost be a basic card, like one you just give to everyone. So, Paladin is getting a new spell called Righteousness. It's going to cost 5 mana, and it reads, give your minions Divine Shield. So anyone on the board, they get a Divine Shield.
Again, I think they're being very cautious.
Yes. I mean, and there are other effects currently that are much, much cheaper that give Divine Shield. So, yeah, but I'm glad that this isn't like 2 mana, give your minions Divine Shield or something. Because we don't want to introduce game-breaking cards into, the classic basic set. But
yeah. Well, the weapon rotated the 3.
It did, yeah.
2 weapon that would sometimes give the Divine
Shield.
Shield.
Yeah, that was a 1 in 4 chance.
That also was around when we had Gen and Baku as well, right? So right now, Paladins aren't token decks. They're not going wide. They're going tall, right? They're doing the mech thing or they're doing the OTK thing. So there's just not a lot of decks that can even utilize this right now in the Paladin class. So it's but again, it's in the classic set, so that maybe at some point Paladins are going wide again and they can play this and then a giant Blood Knight or something, right? And just destroy you. But for now, no. Doesn't seem like it'll see any play right now. And also, again, I think they're just being very careful.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it is an odd cost card, right? Which comes into play in Wild, so...
Yeah, but Wild has access to that weapon. They're just like, we'll do it that way.
Yeah, that's true. Well, but it's... Yeah. Is it 3 mana or 2 mana?
It's 3 mana.
3 mana. Oh, I thought it was 2 mana.
2 weapon,
yeah.
Not gonna see play.
Yeah,
but it's fine because if they made this 3 mana and it was around forever and ever, it definitely end up seeing play at some point, right?
Yeah,
and it would just be kind of game breaking. So
yeah. So that's it for new class cards. Everything from here on out is going to be a neutral. Let's start it with the legendaries. And one of my all-time favorite characters from Heroes of the Storm is finally going to be a legendary, Brightwing.
I hope she has the best voice lines ever. I can't wait. I'm just going to put her in every deck because she's neutral and classic, and I'm just going to play her all the time because she's going to talk in her little cutesy voice about wanting to murder, and I love it.
Well, I would like to join you in that, but I don't think Brightwing's particularly great, so I don't think I'll be joining you. But Brightwing,
I don't care.
a 3 mana, 3/2 legendary neutral dragon with a battle cry that reads, add a random legendary minion to your hand.
Which we know the pool of random legendaries, there's some duds. So this isn't super amazing. But
that said, can Brightwing give you another Brightwing so you can continue Brightwinging?
Yes, the chain of Brightwings.
I will say, though, it's not a terrible card because it's essentially the mage card, right? The 3 mana, 3/2 give you another random mage minion. It's just like a card that replaces itself. It's also a dragon. So the fact that you could potentially at some point put this into dragon decks to activate dragon synergies seems like there's potential here. It's not a horrible card.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's not like it's like
always going to be like a kind of mid-level thing. It's never going to be like the card that you build a deck around. It's just going to be a card that you're like, okay, I need one more dragon, Brightwing. Okay, you're fine.
Well, that's the thing. She kind of goes into like the basic classic dragon package, right? So, I mean, people were playing fairy dragons to have an early game dragon. So I think Brightwing can absolutely find a place in.
Well, it bridges the gap to like a Twilight Drake too, right? Yeah. Because you play it and you instantly get another card back. So then your Twilight Drake is still big, right? So it's, like to me, I look at Brightwing and I go, yeah, I can see a spot for this. It's just not going to make it into that many decks. It's kind of just a very specific thing. Unless you're like Jocelyn, you just want to put it in every deck.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously this goes in every deck. Why are we even talking about this? But what I do wish, though, is that it had the same effect, because Brightwing is a fairy dragon. So I wish it had the can't be targeted effect on it as well.
That'd be interesting.
That's a lot of text, but
it is.
That would be cool.
Should we?
They don't have a keyword for it.
Yeah, they don't have a keyword, which they should have a keyword at this point. It's literally been around since the beginning.
I think it's time for like dual tribes, where we just have a tribe at the bottom that says fairy dragon that also counts as a fairy dragon, or it counts as a dragon, but just means it's immune to spells.
Mm-hmm.
Which would be very cool. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's costed fine. I mean, it's one more mana than a fairy dragon. You lose the spell immunity, but gain a halfway decent battle.
All right, you just have the keyword fairy. Anything that's a fairy.
I would love that. Anything that's a fairy can't be targeted?
Can't be
Perfect.
targeted with spells or hero powers.
We know you just want a fairy unicorn deck, Jocelyn.
I do. Okay. Why is that such a crime?
It's not. It's not. Full disclosure. You need to disclose that type of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely do have ulterior motives, and that is a fairy unicorn deck.
One more legendary that's going to be added into the classic pool is High Inquisitor Whitemane, one of the most famous 5-man dungeon bosses from old school World of Warcraft, and has been brought back multiple times. It's going to be a 7-mana, 6/8 legendary neutral minion with a battle cry that reads, summon all friendly minions that died this turn. Everybody gets to be a priest.
Didn't you predict...
Not my Whitemane. She's wearing pants, not my Whitemane.
Didn't you predict Whitemane? There's one of you guys predict Whitemane as like maybe a character in one of the next couple sets.
Been pretty high up in my famous Warcraft character we haven't seen yet.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't.
So not in one of the newer sets, but in the classic set. Hey.
Yeah, she's been here all along, guys. Yeah. You just didn't notice her.
Just hiding. There's not a lot of great use for this right now, but 7 mana 6/8 isn't a horrible stat line. And I think, again, they're being a little bit cautious. If you make a card with this battle cry too cheap, it allows you to play a bunch of stuff out with Rush, then play a Whitemane, and then get all that stuff back and do some really crazy broken stuff. That being said, it's probably not a card that sees play right now in the current meta, but I could see it being pretty sweet in Arena, just because a lot of times in Arena, your boards do stick around and you're able to make some trades. And you can do things with like rushy mech things and stuff where like you play, like if they're even out on the board already, you run them in and then you get to run them in again. The fact that you get to run them in twice is, I think, the key here. But a 7 mana 6/8 is not a horrible body.
No, it's really not.
No, I think Whitemane is just a good card. I'm with you. I can't think of anything in the meta right now where I'm like, just Whitemane has a slot. I know exactly what's going out, and I know Whitemane's going in. But overall, if I'm just looking at Whitemane in a vacuum, this is a great card.
I think, there's even, you mentioned Rush for sure, but I think even like Death Rattle decks can make use of her as well, right? Anything that has some sort of perk to dying and coming back, Whitemane is going to go in those decks potentially. So
it's also a battle cry. So Shudderwalk, you can get this effect again later.
You could also do something like in Big Priest in Wild, where you go like Zarek's Cloning Gallery, run in all your 1/1s, and then Inquisitor, bam, they all come back as their big normal selves.
1/1 versions.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they're not seeing a lot of play in competition right now, but imagine like Token Druid or Murloc Shaman actually start seeing competitive play. This would be an interesting secondary or tertiary inclusion for mirror matchups, because it's so important to win the board with those types of decks.
Yeah, so you go trade in all your little dudes and then Whitemane all your Murlocs back.
And they're back. Yeah, although a lot of times maybe they're spawning 1/1 Murlocs. You know, your mileage may vary and you have control over that.
Yeah.
It's True Villain Manny in the chat. Play this after your Doomsayer, and the Cactar goes, yeah, but then your Doomsayer comes back.
Next level plays, asserting dominance.
I mean, if you need a late game Doomsayer that bad, it might not be the worst thing in the world that you get a second one.
Yeah, right. You get the Doomsayer twice in a row. There is obviously the like Unleash the Hounds plus Whitemane thing you can do as well.
There's lots of stuff here. Yeah,
I actually did when I was playing my Flark's Boomzooka deck. I did quite a lot of Unleash plus Revenge of the Wild. Bring back your Unleash, and that's just insta. Like, I have the board now, so it's just a more expensive version that's also tied to a 6/8, right? So,
well, and that's also a really good point, is that everything that we're talking about right now is pretty board centric, right? Is that you're wanting to, run your minions into stuff. We're not talking about like you can unleash the hounds and go face, and then, get a whole board and another set of attacks. Like if you choose to go face, fine, but then white main's not going to bring anything back, right? Like this is a very board centric card, which I think is a really good design feature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I think it's just super fair. It's never going to be like a build around card, but it could definitely complement certain styles of decks.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to Doomsayer. I'm going to white main my Doomsayer. I'm going to silence my Doomsayer. Then I'm going to Divine Spirit Inner Fire my Doomsayer.
Oh, damn.
Oh, next level.
How's that sound?
Super next level.
How y'all going to deal with that 14-14?
That's not bad.
All right. I'm okay. You've sold me on Brightwing more than I originally thought, and I already like White Mane. So let's move on from the legendaries to see what else is coming into the neutral card pool for the classic set. First up is Baron's Stable Hand, a 7-mana 4/4 epic neutral minion with a battle cry that reads "Summon a random beast."
This is hot garbage.
Wow, what a bad card.
Yeah.
Also, not like they haven't mentioned it in a while, but we heard so many times that epic cards were supposed to be wacky and maybe kind of difficult to understand. This is such a straightforward card, and it's epic. I don't know why.
The problem for me is the swing in this card from its bad outcome to its insane outcome.
Well, yeah, sometimes they'll be ridiculous, but
sometimes King Crush, sometimes 1/1.
1/1, yeah. That's,
you know what I mean? Like
summons are just all little 1/1 piddly nothings.
There's a lot of 1/1 beasts right now.
Yeah.
I don't like this design either. I don't know. I mean, yes, it's a bad card, but people are going to put it in their deck. I mean, at low rank,
and learn a lesson. Dills. Learn a lesson. That's what this is.
But they're also you're gonna get so frustrated when you're at rank 25 and somebody plays this and friggin' gets an 8/8 crush that charges in and kills you. It's gonna be really annoying. I just don't like cards with this much variance involved, right? That's so much. That's such a wide range.
Yeah.
And it's a wide range.
At least it's terrible. Thank you, I guess. But
it's a wide range in standard, right? But in wild, it's even bigger. Like this card would have, it just has no consistency whatsoever. And when you have no consistency and also you're tying it to a 4/4 body for 7, like you could pay 7 mana for 5/5 of stats. Or you could pay 7 mana for 12/12 of stats. That's too much.
8/8 of it having charge. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like just nope. I don't like this card very much.
You can get an Indasta off of this that then rushes in and it summons like something else. Like there's the high end of it is insane, and then the average is awful, and it's like
I feel
that kind of card.
The name is wrong. It should be blindfolded stable hand, so the theme is better.
Yeah, it's just stumbling around the stable and just
opens a gate,
random door.
I don't know, it might be a dragon, it might be an angry chicken. We'll see what happens. Here it goes.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, those stats were fine, and because someone Hachikumo in chat room is mentioning Spiteful Summoner, and those stats on Spiteful Summoner are fine because you're controlling the results by your deck building skills. This has nothing to do with your deck. This doesn't say reveal a minion and summon a beast of the same cost or something.
Recruit a random beast.
Or recruit, it just is from the entire pool of beasts with no limiting factor to it, and so it's just too much.
Well, listen, somebody out there has a deck that is just titled RNGesus, and they are stoked about this card.
So there's the neutral card we got recently, right? That was when you cast a spell, summon a 3-cost beast. It's like, why couldn't they have restricted the cost here? You know,
and they might going forward, right? Because they did say that they were designing on the side of caution because these would never rotate. So they were, on the low end of the power level. So I get that. They might change it in the future. Yeah. But yeah, the way it's currently.
They probably don't want it to be that complex though, right?
Yeah.
As a classic card.
Yeah. But this iteration, I think, is terrible.
5 years from now, we'll get a statement from Team 5 saying we're going to have to rotate Baron Stablehand because it is limiting our design of beasts.
Pretty sure that would happen because of Deathstalker Rexar before Baron Stablehand.
Yep. Next is SI7 Infiltrator. This is a 4-mana 5/4 rare neutral minion with a battle cry that reads destroy a random enemy secret.
Which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that this is our only secret hate that's in the classic set now, right? Everything else came in expansions?
Yes.
Because there was the tentacle face.
The Steel Secret was an expansion. The
Eater Secrets was Old Gods, right?
Yeah, we currently have one now.
But I think, that's right. Is that the one that just straight up destroys them all? Because Eater
Flare.
Secret.
Flare is the only.
Flare. Okay, yeah.
Secret
but sorry, I should have specified neutral.
Sure. Yeah, this seems like an okay card. It's probably not like right now. Secret Hunter, even though it's technically the most popular deck, is not actually a deck I see often enough that I would probably include this card. Mm-hmm. Obviously, though, you also do see mages getting random secrets because of Magic Trick right now.
Yeah.
And the body's fine. 4-mana 5/4 body is totally fine. So it's not like you're paying a huge price for this battle cry.
Yeah, but it doesn't do the thing that we always hate with the cards that hate another kind of card where they grow. It's like, okay, this just has decent stats, so I can just play this as a tech card. It does the thing, and then it's over. So I think that this is a good card design. This is the one I'm most excited about of the 3 neutrals that they showed here.
In a specialist format, you could definitely put this in a secondary, tertiary deck type of thing. Also, I think in Arena, if there's a lot of like mages or if paladins are picking, like right now they got that auto matrix secret thing.
Auto defense matrix.
Yeah, like that card is really friggin' annoying. For 4-mana 5/4. Like it's not so bad. If you do nothing and you just play a 4-mana 5/4, you're okay with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, decent card.
Yeah. I agree. And I could see him play now. Maybe. I'm not sure I would give it a slot, but if I was in a tournament.
Depends on the tournament, depends on the meta, right?
Yeah, it's a solid card. And then finally, Arcane Devourer. This is the last card that'll be getting added in. It's an 8-mana 5/5 rare neutral elemental, and it reads, whenever you cast a spell, gain +2/+2. So if you were worried about summoning random 7-cost minions in Baron Stablehand, well, you should maybe be a little worried about summoning random 8-cost minions because of Arcane Devourer.
Yeah, this doesn't seem too hot. Like, why would I ever put this in my deck?
Too expensive. I mean, you could definitely go, with the current version of Cyclone Mage, you could definitely do like a Sorcerer's Apprentice plus a whole bunch of like bananas and stuff and make a giant Devourer. The thing is, that deck is already making plenty of giant minions. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think they need this at all.
Yeah, sometimes you'll get it off of the 7-cost 5/5 that uses hand size. Yeah, the conjure thing. So it'll show up, but yeah, I don't know. Seems too expensive. Anytime a card costs 8, it really needs to do something cool,
Well, and I mean, like, because Tatrum's saying, a cheap spell deck too, and I get that if you put this down on 8, then you play a bunch of cheap spells and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But I would rather put Antonidas down, play a bunch of cheap spells. He's 7 and get fireballs. Yeah. So I feel like there's better ways to make use of cheap spells, and I don't think that the decks like need something like this, because if you're playing a lot of cheap spells, you're probably playing something burny too, right? So you don't necessarily want to wait till turn 8 to play this down and then, play a bunch of spells, make it really big. You still have to wait a turn to even attack with it. I think there's better ways to do what that deck wants to do than an Arcane Devourer.
The cheap spell deck isn't gonna, like, if you get to turn 8 and you've hoarded all these cheap spells, you probably haven't been doing anything to the board and you're probably losing the game. And this isn't going to turn that around for you.
Yeah.
Very high chance that whoever you're playing against has a way to deal with this after you pump it up. So, but it makes sense. They said ahead of time for all of these cards that they were trying to, go on the safe side of power level Even though it sounds like the three of us think both of the legendaries have potential, and that SI7 Infiltrator is just straight up a good card in a secret heavy meta. But beyond
it's
that,
a good tech card, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a solid tech card. Beyond that, all these I think successfully fall on the conservative side of power.
In before we're in the Baron stable hand meta.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. So, I want Brightwing and Whitemane. I need those cards, and they're freaking legendary. And at least Baron stable hand isn't going to be good. I don't need to spend the dust on 2 more epics.
I totally want gold Brightwing. That might be a craft.
I wonder what her, that tongue is animating, right?
Oh, it has to, right?
Has to, like glisten. I bet there's like a little animated like spit flicks flying off of it.
Ew.
It's gonna be great. Or no, it's Brightwing. I'm sorry, it'll be the blood of her enemies.
Yes, because she loves murder, obviously.
She does. Yes. Yep, absolutely. So, anyways, before we get into strategy, we're going to be talking about Aggro Overload Shaman this week. We have a sponsor to thank today, and that is MeUndies. They are back sponsoring this episode of The Angry Chicken. You should go check out their offerings over at meundies.com/TAC. If you're unfamiliar with MeUndies, they make just the most comfortable underwear ever. If you didn't know, you probably spend around 90% of your life in underwear. If you don't, no judgment here. We're not here to commando shame you. But if you are one of those who spends about 90% of your life in underwear, it should be comfortable. And that's exactly what MeUndies does. It's like the softest fabric ever. They use a micromodal fabric, which is 3 times softer than cotton. And they don't even stop at undies. Like they make loungewear. I've got pajama pants. I've got a shirt it's the first thing in the wash and the first thing out of it, because I just live in it at night, is that freaking MeUndies pajama shirt. I love it.
It's super freaking comfortable.
Yeah, feels like you're wearing nothing at all, but your neighbors don't complain when you go outside to take the trash out. Great.
I love all their patterns and stuff. They come out with like new awesome patterns. Although I am one of those people that goes with the adventurous package. So I like all the crazy colors and patterns, and they have a new one like every month. I think they just released like mermaid panties or something. I'm like, yes, please.
And I've got like cactuses. I've got avocados. Their prints are bananas. And if that sounds a little too crazy, they may have literally had a banana print, by the way. There's others to choose from. They have more toned down. They have just a bright color option. They also have kind of a classic, your muted underwear palette. But you should go check them out. And you can also get 15% off your first pair. Also, you get free shipping, and you get a 100% satisfaction guarantee when you go to meundies.com/TAC. Again, that's 15% off your first pair, free shipping, and a 100% satisfaction guarantee when you go to meundies.com/TAC. We thank them for their support, and we thank you for checking out MeUndies, which might be your undies one day. Now, let's talk about Aggro Overload Shaman.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay!
So I've been playing a lot of Murloc Shaman personally, but this Aggro Overload Shaman has been making some waves, and we've mentioned it a couple weeks now in passing. So figured it was about time we actually did a breakdown. And there's 2 pretty popular versions right now. There's one running Electra Storm Surge and Zentimo, and then there's one that's not running either of those legendaries and you would probably file under more affordable. It's also the more popular version. It seems a little more aggro focused, and has doubled up on Lickum and Feral Spirit over a Zentimo and an Electra Storm Surge.
Yeah, and I've got to say, so I played both versions, and I do like the popular aggro version of it, but I've had a lot of success on the flip side, not so much with Electra, but with Zentimo specifically, because often I've had stuff like taunts and things placed in my way of getting, my final damage push my unstable elemental dude through, and being able to like play Zentimo alongside an Earthshock and get rid of whatever's in my way in order to get that final damage push has gotten me quite a few wins that I probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I think that, as both lists are definitely viable. But I do think Zentimo gets me a lot of wins that I probably shouldn't have. Electra can do the same sort of thing because you can play like Electra Lava Burst or something and get those final points of damage. But that situation hasn't come up to me as often as being able to get my board through something.
Well, Electra double rock biter on your Doomhammer too.
Yeah, that too. Yep.
Pretty gross. But yeah, like the Zentimo thing, I do think the utility of Zentimo and Electra does help in the current meta, because like, let's say somebody, makes a Beryllium Nullifier, untargetable thing.
Yeah.
And you're like, I can't silence
that. Happening to you a lot.
And then I can silence the thing next to it and silence it. And
yeah.
there's situations that arise getting through mirror images, things like that. There's actually a lot of situations that come up where being able to, lightning bolt 3 different things. Although the warning on that is you do actually triple overload with overload spells in Zentimo, so you got to be careful with that. But it still seems to come up fairly consistently that you just need to, because this deck can get a lot of face damage in without a board, but it still is one of those decks that like needs a little bit of chip damage from minions at some point.
I usually find I'm like looking at my hand and thinking like, okay, I just need to get like 4 damage from my board over the next couple of turns and I've got it.
Yeah.
And so I think those cards do help with it for sure.
Yeah, so I prefer the other version because I noticed myself having more of an issue starting the game with this deck rather than ending it. And the second Lickum, like just upping my chances by double of having the Lickum weapon in my hand. You know how you feel about the Undertaker, Joss? That's how I feel about having to say Lickum.
I love Lickum.
Conversation. But it feels to me to be really freaking important to have that card, because starting the game with a Sludge Slurper makes it really easy, but you can't guarantee that. And the Lickum with all these overload cards just seems to be the thing that I can depend on more often than not to get me out of the early stages of a Hearthstone game with this deck.
Well, the great thing about Lickum too is that it works on like 2 turns in a row based on your overload. So like if I play Lickum and overload this turn, then that counts, but it'll also keep, because my crystals are still overloaded next turn, like it counts both those turns for the buff on the weapon. So you get a lot of use out of Lickum with your overload, or a lot more than at least I thought.
Yeah, I find that it's always a 3 attack weapon. Yeah. It's really rare for me that it ever doesn't have. Like you kind of run so many overload cards that you play overload cards into overload cards on your next turn, where it's like, yeah, I have mana locked, but I'm still doing something OP for what I'd be doing with this amount of mana. So it's almost like my overload didn't matter, right? When you have this much overload, each spell you play is still slightly more powerful than it's supposed to be for its mana cost. So the overload matters a lot less, right? Yeah. If you have, there's a lot of times when you play a deck where you have a lot of overload management, and I feel like this deck, as an overload deck, has a lot less of that. But most of the time, the card that that I found I've been trying to avoid being overloaded for is Thunderhead. Like on turn 3 going into 4, I'm trying not to be overloaded because I want to just chuck a Thunderhead down, whether I utilize it or not that turn, right? Because right now as a 3/6, that card is just nuts. Like your opponent will just 2-for-1 themselves trying to get rid of that thing all the time. They'll trade everything into it. It just kind of opens you up to be able to take initiative on the next turn, right? Because they spend everything dealing with this Thunderhead, and then on turn 5 you can Doomhammer or Feral Spirit plus Angler, like whatever it might be. You just suddenly you're kind of in front at that point. So that's the only card I ever find myself really being concerned about the overload. So yeah, you're right. The double Lickum makes a lot of sense in that regard, because it's like a super fiery war axe, right?
Yeah, a card that got nerfed, and it's just better than that card as long as you are overloaded in a deck that is running a ton of overload.
Imagine if Fiery Warx had 3 charges and cost 2. That's basically what Lickum is most of the time. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And I just I find myself really needing that card. I mean, obviously, if I start with Sludge Slurper, it doesn't seem as necessary. But the games where I don't get Sludge Slurper and I'm sitting on things like Zap and Voltaic Burst, and it's like, yeah, these are good, but they're not great when they're not comboed with something else. And the other things you want to combo with them are things like Unbound and Thunderhead, and that tends to come a little later in the game. But Lickum, you can deploy that on turn 2 or hell on turn 1 if you're rolling with a coin.
How do you guys feel about the Angler in that version that you're talking about, Garrett? The Underbelly Angler? Because the only other Murloc you're running besides the second Underbelly Angler is the Sludge Slurpers, right? Mm-hmm. So I've definitely had games where I've snowballed it out of control. But I also feel like there's a lot of games where it's just a 2-mana 2/3.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to sit on it waiting for that other Murloc. You still are a tempo deck that really needs to just utilize your mana to play cards. So a lot of times it's just a 2-mana 2/3.
I think it helps shore up, as someone who, when I first started playing this deck, felt like I consistently had problems starting the game. This is another way to alleviate that issue because it is a 2-mana 2/3. Play it.
It also requires an answer, right?
Yes.
So
yeah, exactly. And if it was a 3/2, I don't think it would be nearly as good. But this has a tendency to stick. And in games where you don't get to start with a Sludge Slurper, you don't get to start with a Lickum, this has saved my butt many times. And it's just a solid early game minion.
Yeah, I found too, especially if you're playing it on turn 2 and you're getting that Angler down, then most of the time they've either run their minions into it or use some kind of removal that then usually lets either my Spirit of the Frog or the Unbound Elemental. Yeah, whatever I play on the following turn usually sticks because they've, been so worried, especially in the current meta where a lot of people are probably expecting if they see like Sludge Surfer or Angler on your first early turns, they're like, oh, it's going to be Murlocs. Like I can't let any of this stuff stick when really that's not my game plan. So it's almost like I'm doing this, but actually, no, I'm not. I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's another great little kind of surprise as well. But the big thing is that your early game removal tools like Zap and Voltaic Burst, they really need anything else to kind of close the removal gap, and the Angler just helps with that. It just sets up so many things. But just play the damn thing. You don't need to wait. You don't need to sit there waiting for your Sludge Slurper or your other Angler to show up. It's really great when they do, but just deploy it. Just play it on 2. Get this on board. No, it's a solid card. Again, I've been having a lot of success with Murloc Shaman, so I'm also pretty soft on on Underbelly Angler. It's my buddy right now.
You're soft on the Underbelly.
I am.
Just destroys Murloc Shaman, right? I think the worst matchups are just the Warriors. Is that right?
They're pretty rough. They're rougher, it seems, for the Zentimo Electra deck list versus specifically, which one is it? I think it's worse with Bomb Warrior for the Zentimo Electra Storm Surge list, and I'm not 100% sure. I think
Control Warrior just because of Weapons Project, right? Because Weapons, every Control Warrior one's double Weapons Project and Harrison Jones, so. It's like, are you ever going to get a Doomhammer to do anything?
Yeah.
It's unlikely.
They're both really rough matchups.
But everything else is in the green, I think, because right now it's like, okay, if you're not playing against a Warrior, it's probably a Mage or a Rogue most of the time, right? And you beat up on those because their game plan takes a little longer to get set up than yours does. Plus you have all this burn damage to finish things off. Plus they're not running a lot of weapon hate anymore. And then if it's not that, then it's probably like, a Paladin playing mechs or a Hunter playing mechs. And I think you're just deal damage faster than they do again. So it seems like a deck that has a pretty good, solid matchup rate amongst all the popular stuff. It's just, if you have one bad matchup, that's a good deck to climb with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It has a couple close matchups in things like Mech Pally and Hook Tusk Rogue, and the other shamans that aren't Murloc or this, your big shamans and your control shamans. Those are pretty close. but that's okay.
I've actually seen Big Shaman coming up quite often. I haven't actually seen anyone else running like more aggro lists, but I've definitely seen Big Shamans, and I'm like, man, once you get that fountain out, I'm just toast.
Yeah, the fountain that's just too much healing. You can't overtake it, especially when you don't run Hex. You have to have an Earth Shock for that.
Yeah,
and they've already healed for.
And they've already gotten 8 health back, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I will say, actually, in that matchup, there's kind of like a 200 IQ play you can do where you get them kind of low, they clear your board, and then you just stop playing minions. Like, don't even hit your button, right? Because if you don't, the fountain needs something to hit. It's got rush, not charge, right? So if you actually just stop playing minions and just burn face with like weapons and stuff and lava bursts and things like that, you can just kind of stop that healing.
Yeah, which is an easy task for this deck.
Yeah,
whichever one you're piloting, because they're both running double Doom Hammers, double Lava Bursts, double Rock Biter weapons.
By the time you get into turn 8, you should be close to killing them, and you shouldn't need minions to ever hit again.
Yeah,
at that point. You should be able to finish the job with just the spells in your hand.
By the way, what's the call?
You've gotten a Spirit of the Frog turn off at some point, right?
Yeah. What's the call? What's the time to us being okay with Rock Biter again? Since the
I think Rock Biter is okay at 2 mana, right?
Absolutely.
It's only good when it gets paired with the Doom Hammer. So
yeah, I do find it's funny that one of the power spikes of this deck is literally Rock Biter Doom Hammer, which is one of the most OG Shaman damage combos ever.
So I remember that tournament that I played against Chalky forever ago that I lost to him. He was playing a Shaman deck with Leroy, 4 mana Leroy, Wind Fury, Rock Biter. Rock Biter was 1 mana, and he was like playing the Leroy, double Rock Bitering it, Wind Furying it. And it's like so funny to think back on that being like a combo. It was like a legit combo.
God, that's ridiculous. 4 mana Leroy. What a world we lived in.
Yeah.
Jeez. Good Lord. So we've got links to both of these deck lists in the show notes. Head on over to amove.tv/TAC and look for the episode 320 post. Show notes are always linked in the bottom. You'll see a Google Docs link. Get them in there. They're also, they're pretty easy to find on your HS Replay and your other popular fan sites. So go check it out. I think this is a really solid deck. I mean, we talked about how many good matchups it has. And I think a bit how much I recommend this deck, it really falls on how much you're seeing Warrior.
Yeah. I don't think it's a very good, actually, Hachikuma just brought up Specialist. I was just going to say, I don't think it's a very good Specialist deck yet because aggro is right now, I think generally people kind of tech for like Mage, Warrior, but it's also really easy to just pick one of those techs and it's kind of your anti-aggro tech as well. So it's an interesting spot right now in like a Grandmaster type situation, or if you're playing in any Specialist format. And I wonder if that's really just because we haven't gotten to a position where Warrior is less good in Specialist than it is right now, or if it's just because a deck like this is always going to be easy to tech against. It's very interesting to see. I think that's one of the things about Specialist, because this would be probably one of the like 3rd, 4th decks you'd see in Conquest a lot, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good deck to just beat up on anything mid-range, anything semi-slow that's not as defensive. And you definitely see this, I think, if we were still playing Conquest, but you just don't see Grandmaster yet.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing with Conquest, right? Is that you were trying to make it so that no one else's lineup could 100% target your lineup. So you did have some variations of what your decks are actually trying to do. Like, not a lot of people brought all 4 decks of the same archetype, unless it was way off meta. So like when the meta was just like not targeting aggro, then people did well when they brought a full aggro lineup, but that didn't happen very often.
No. It's funny because Specialist is not at all like our. They say that they want it to be more like our ladder. I feel like our ladder is more like a Conquest format because it is just like, okay, I queue this deck and I'm just trying to beat a field, right? I do hope that at some point we do see the Specialist format as a ladder, a button. I would like to try it. I don't really have a place to do it. And I think about a lot of these decks these days in Specialist terms now after watching so much Grandmasters.
Yeah, it's not convenient for sure. I would just like to see any format button. I don't add it on there. Experiment a little. But anyways, yeah, go check out the deck list, amove.tv/TAC. Let's take an email and wrap this episode up.
Hello?
Hello, it's me.
Hello?
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
You can send your emails to tacpodcast@gmail.com, or if you're a patron, you've got access to the patron Discord. You can drop questions right in there. Tyrius, thank you for the phonetic on your name, by the way, because I wasn't entirely sure, writes in and says, hello, mouthy cluckers. I'm writing to share what I expect is a minority opinion. I've been playing Hearthstone since Grand Tournament and have enjoyed the esports scene, but it's only with the advent of the Specialist format that I found myself truly enthralled by it. Watching Dog win, I realized that I find the Specialist tournament to be so much more compelling than Last Hero Standing or Conquest. I love how the secondary and tertiary decks really highlight tech choices and show the brilliance of the best players. Who would have ever thought that a deranged doctor would win Dog the tournament? I know that's hyperbole, but let me take a little dramatic license here. Thank you for that note, because I was about to call that out as hyperbole.
Go all Garrett on it.
I feel like all of the decks, even the primary decks, are far more carefully crafted than the decks in Last Hero Standing and Conquest, which makes sense. If you have to play 3 classes, then you have to devote time to learning each of the fundamentally different decks. With Specialist, you master a single deck. That leads to more complex and varied games, even with fewer classes represented. Don't get me wrong, I don't think the Specialist is perfect. I would like to see them draft some rules that would require the players to bring a more diverse set of classes. I would also love to see anyone, play my favorite class, Priest. But at the end of the day, for the first time in nearly 5 years, I've been playing Hearthstone, and I find myself drawn to watch the Grandmasters and Masters play rather than watching another 100% win rate meme deck video. Cool. I clearly don't agree from my comments last week, but
well, I've got to say, I'm kind of coming around on Specialist as the pros have gotten more used to the format, because I find that this past weekend in Grandmasters specifically, when we actually saw some Paladin play, the matchups were just a little bit different. Like, we had 4 major classes that we saw a lot of play, right? Rogue, Warrior, Mage, which, we kind of started off in a very heavy just Rogue and Warrior meta that then eventually Mage came in, and then now we've got Paladin coming in as well. So I feel like we're getting to a place where they're finding the more viable strategies and tech choices and all that kind of stuff. And the introduction of that 4th class in Paladin has really made the format more interesting to me. I don't like to watch when it's just a whole bunch of mirror matches or only 2 classes represented, but I have enjoyed, especially like the faster matchups, like the best of 3s, and a little bit more of class diversity I think this past weekend of Specialist in Grandmasters was actually quite fun to watch.
Yeah, it's been good. I will say, though, that I think as long as Hearthstone is rock, paper, scissors with its matchups, it's always going to be a little bit funky, because when you watch, when a warrior gets a rogue, and then the warrior is just favored, when a mage gets a warrior, and the mage is just favored, it does make it a little bit, I feel like the secondary, tertiary decks, it's close to what you need to do to make then those matchups more interesting, because what you really need to do is you need to make it so, sure, the first game is favored, but now the players can react in such a way that they can kind of tilt it back in their favor, right? And there are some storylines that some players are better at this than others, right? People have brought up like Frozen or Purple as being able to take unfavorable matchups and actually like tilt them on their head a little bit and kind of make that comeback. But I think, it's really up. It's on Hearthstone and the Team 5 devs to make sure that balance is not as rock, paper, scissors as it used to be, because it was fine when it was Conquest Last Hero Standing, because that was the game, right? The game was, I counter you, you counter me, we counter each other, and that's who does a better job of that, right?
Fun dance, yeah.
But when I don't have the opportunity to actually, like, when there's some matchups where no matter what I do with my secondary, tertiary deck, I'm still unfavored. That's a little bit rough, and so that's really where the format can improve. But it is like I said on the show a couple weeks ago, or last week, I think this last tournament in Vegas was a win for Specialist. It's better than expected, but it's not perfect. And I do know they said that they're going to be revisiting it. I'm glad that there are people out there who are loving it more than they love the other stuff, though. That's a really good sign too, because we're still getting good numbers on these tournaments, and that I think was another thing that a lot of people were watching was, does nobody care all of a sudden when it's a Specialist format? And I think people still care. Like every time I tune in when it's Grandmaster weekend and stuff, or like that Las Vegas tournament, Hearthstone's right up there at the top of the Twitch numbers. So
yeah, the Grandmaster weekends do seem to be getting about the same viewership as the tour stops did last year. I would say, and then the Masters tour in Vegas got about the same as what the seasonal championships were getting. So the numbers haven't really fluctuated all that much, which, like you said, is good. They made a big format change, and the fact that the numbers didn't drop, very good thing. So I think that this is good. The only thing I do agree with you, Dills, when you say like it is a little bit rock, paper, scissors, and sometimes it just matters like which opponent you queue into. And sure. I think it's a little bit maybe better in Grandmaster format because they know their opponents, so they can potentially try to like mind game and figure out what they're going to do versus like an open field like Vegas was. It becomes a little bit harder to predict what you're going to go up against when you're trying to figure out what 300 opponents are bringing. Yeah. But I think the biggest indicator to me of how successful the format is and how well balanced the game is how many 2-0s are we seeing? And I think we were seeing a lot of 2-0s originally, and we're starting to see a little bit more of the 2-1s. So that to me, that means that the unfavored person's putting up a fight. So that's a good thing. That's heading towards balance.
That's actually a really good point. You don't want to see it be like, well, the one guy just made a bad call in the deck that they brought. Although that is happening for sure. I remember Firebet saying something about he brought like a bad choice in Warrior. It was a Warrior deck that he felt just wasn't teched properly or whatever. And he said, I played really well. I took the correct lines and I still just couldn't win because I just had bad matchups.
A bad call. Yeah.
And obviously like, that's also a skill in a card game, right? Is understanding how to build a deck and all that kind of stuff. But you also do want to see good play rewarded and not just, okay, well, I could just throw out any card here because I'm just so favored in this matchup that it doesn't really matter. That's not fun to watch.
Yeah.
So, it's really on Blizzard, and all these little small changes they're making, hopefully kind of add up if they keep doing this. If this is really the new way that they're doing business, the small changes mean that I think there will be enough fluctuation that Specialists will work out.
It's really what Specialists needs, right? Is a whole bunch of little tweaking, and they need to be willing to make balance changes, even if it is just a card here, a card there, because they need to keep their format balanced and viable so that we do see fresh. Yeah. So we do see some class diversity. If we're not seeing class diversity and if we're getting lots of 2-0s, that means the format isn't successful as far as I'm concerned. So, but they do seem like they're trying to be a little bit more nimble and willing to change and willing to do things differently. So I'm again, like, I feel like ever since they announced this format, I've been cautiously optimistic. I'm still cautiously optimistic.
It still feels early. Which is obviously, it feels like we've had so many games played and we just had our first major LAN event. But it still feels very early on. And I want to see some relegation and see how that feels. And that's because that to me is going to have such a large impact on the overall storyline of this year.
I kind of feel like that's a Grandmasters thing, though, right? That's not necessarily a Specialist thing, all of the relegation talk, because I still don't think that Grandmasters is put together in the most optimal way. But again, it's still super new. So I am enjoying the fact that I can basically from Friday to Sunday at any point in my day, turn on Play Hearthstone on Twitch, and there is Hearthstone for me to watch in a very competitive manner. So that is super cool.
Well, I think that's their goal. And I think they're achieving it in a good way, even if I personally was really done with Warrior pretty quickly.
I definitely don't sit and watch it all weekend, but it's nice that like whenever my breaks in my day happen, there's competitive Hearthstone to watch. So
Kibler made a really interesting video on the state of competitive play in Hearthstone and Magic. MTG Arena is also doing like a league style format. And it's like a 10, 12 minute, no edits video, just him kind of talking about the pros and cons of both formats and the league format itself specifically. But it's really interesting. And I thought his take was pretty good that, these are the first seasons of both. And it would be ridiculous to think that they just both got it right on the first try. So it's like right now it's working, and hopefully maybe in the second half or whatever, after they've had the first Grandmasters playoffs, would be like a good time to maybe revisit and revamp things in a small enough way that it kind of livens things up again. But right now you're right, Jocelyn, like it's the fact that it's getting better, not worse, is I think the number one thing I'm looking at to go, okay, I think this is actually gonna work, because we didn't just get stuck in that rut, right, of the warrior mirror match forever and ever and ever. It actually has changed.
Oh God, if it had been like week 4 and it was still warrior, oh God, I would have been so turned off Grandmasters and Specialists that I might not even have watched Vegas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Vegas turned out to be actually really, really good.
Yep.
By the way, Haichikumo did bring up the caster rotation thing is cool. It's nice to see some fresh faces for sure.
Yeah, and I really like the pairing of a more traditional caster personality alongside the pro players. I think Language Hacker's been doing a great job. Gallon's been doing a great job too. They are like they seem to get rid of my biggest gripe with Hearthstone casting, which is the caster pairs and the inside jokes crap. Like, talk about the game, guys. That's what I want to hear about. And it's like the personality tends to kind of like keep it light and entertaining, while the pro player then brings that next level of analysis. And I find those pairings are working so much more for me when I'm watching these games. I'm really, really enjoying them.
It's a traditional sports format, right? Where you get your play-by-play color man guy or whatever, and then you get your former player to actually tell them why somebody did something they did and what was really going on. Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. So it's been really good. Yeah, I love somebody like a Frodan, and then you put next to him a pro player, right?
Yeah.
Because Frodan can give you the actual, he can host it and all that stuff, and then you just turn to the other person and say, well, what's going on in this exact turn here? And
what would you do if this was you? And
legit analysis about what the player might be thinking of in the lines and why they're different from each other and things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been vastly improved. I was with you on the inside jokes, Joss's. Just a little much at times.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for your email, Ontarius. Keep those emails coming to tacpodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to bring us to the end of this podcast. Thanks again for those of you supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC, and to our producers, Declan H., Sean C., and Cheesy Bob. And we got a big announcement to make at the end of the show. This is hard to say, but Dills, I'm going to pass to you because you are leaving the show.
Yeah, actually, this is something I've been thinking about for a while, and something I've been ignoring for a long time is just my own mental well-being, my own mental health, and it just kind of came to a head at some point for me that if I don't deal with it now, it's going to get worse. And it's been getting worse for a long time. It's easy for me to ignore it and think of the things that are going well. It's like, podcast is doing pretty well. I should probably just keep doing this thing while I'm not doing well mentally inside, right? And the other problem for me too is because of these jobs that I'm doing, because of the podcast and the streaming being like the main income for me, then having a part-time job, I don't have legit healthcare. And so then suddenly when I'm like, I need to start seeing doctors and getting medication, it's like, this costs more than I want it to. So I need to send my life in a different direction to deal with this stuff. And it's unfortunate that I have to then make a tough decision. And it's not a decision I wanted to make. I wanted to figure out a way to do all of it and make all of it work. But it just turns out that I can't. And so talking a lot to a therapist, talking a lot to people in my life, they said, you just got to do the thing that's best for you. And you can't worry about, because one of the big things for me was I didn't want to let people down, right? I didn't want to let our fans down. I didn't want to let you guys down. I didn't want to make people sad and unhappy. And it's like, yeah, that's one of the problems that you have, is that you're doing that and you're not worried about the things that you need to be worried about. So yeah, it's just a really, really tough decision, but I have to find a little more stability. I need to cut things that are causing me anxiety out. And I need to spend some time doing things like testing medications, figuring out which ones work. And while I'm doing that, I run into me being unstable. I don't have a lot of experience with this. I'm talking to people who do. And they tell me that early on when you're trying out a new medication, there's a leveling out period. I was not aware of these things, and I'm definitely aware now that is very true and very real. And I need to make sure that I'm safe while I'm doing those things. So anyway, the long story short, it's just, there's a lot of other things. This isn't the only decision that I'm making. There's other things that I've had to kind of reevaluate as whether they're things I can continue to do because they are the things that are triggering and causing anxiety for me. I need to cut all that kind of stuff out and find, at least for the time being, a way to be in something that feels steady, safe level where I can deal with the process of getting better. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm sorry to you guys. I'm sorry to everybody listening that I couldn't make all of it work, but it's just something I have to do.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we've been doing this together for so long.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that you are, you're doing what you need to do for yourself. But I'm sure it's going to be such an asked question so many times. Where would you like people to keep up with you, dude, when you're...
Well, I'm still going to stream here and there. It's just going to be less because what I also realize too, that I get into these headspaces where the idea of turning the stream on and trying to be entertaining and stuff, gives me that anxiety, right? I feel it. I'm just there's no way I can just suddenly be on right now. Right. And, so you can still follow me on twitch.tv/WillieDills, but just expect that there's probably going to be a lot more daytime chill streams, at least until I find, because I also will be looking for more of a full-time gig, maybe as a producer or something like that, off camera, editor, that kind of thing, for a podcast or production company here in Austin. And then I'll also on Twitter, and then I'm still going to do 1-900 Wrestling because it's just a super laid back podcast, and if I need to miss a week or whatever of that, it's really not as big of a deal as this. The Patreon aspect and the income aspect isn't there. And so there's just no pressure at all. So those types of things I'm still going to do. And I've toyed with the idea of just starting to make videos just for spare time fun things, because I do still want to be creative. So yeah, just twitch.tv/WillieDills and at WillieDills on Twitter. But there's going to be a lot less content coming out of me, at least for the time being. But that's just that's part of the deal. Being in front of people makes it really difficult when you're not feeling good about yourself, So I need less of that in my life and more of the self-care aspect and less of the worrying about being entertaining.
It's really important. And I think that there's a lot of pressure on a lot of content creators at all different levels of popularity. And it's something that we don't talk about enough. So. Yeah.
It's funny because I've heard, YouTubers and streamers and stuff talk about this in the past. And I've always kind of been yeah, I do feel that, but then I'd be no, I don't feel like that.
But no, I'm actually fine.
Yeah, but no, I'm totally fine. I was talking to my mom about this, and people will ask me how I'm doing, and I don't think I ever say anything, but I'm good, And it's I need to stop saying that. I need to just be well, not I need to start burdening everybody with all my problems, but I need to stop just being yeah, I'm fine, because that's what I tell myself too. So it's kind of. It's good that things got to the head before it got to that point where it was just things got completely blown up and something really bad happened. but it was like I also needed to recognize like that when like I have episodes, like this is something I have to take seriously, and that's kind of what's actually happened. So anyway, it's I want everybody to know like you should keep supporting these two and keep supporting this show. This is the best Hearthstone show on the internet, and who knows, maybe I'll be back to doing Hearthstone content. Maybe I'll be able to work with Jocelyn and Garrett again at some point. But for right now, I just got to take a step back.
Well, dude, I wish you the best of luck, and again, everyone listening, go support the shit out of Dills. Go to twitch.tv/WillieDills, follow him on Twitter, and I hope you're doing all right, dude. I really do.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So,
Joss, you and I are going to be back next week. We can do the normal sign off as usual, but again, Dills, this ending, this is all about you, dude. I want people to know where they can support you, and we'll end the show here. So, for today's episode, job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.
Yes.